Yes, we are live.
Good evening to everyone. First of all, happy puja to all of you. It's an autumn has started, but it seems summer hasn't gone from Guwahati. It's still extremely hot. But let's welcome all of you another day of our Thursday series on gender and sexuality. And today we have two wonderful speakers, uh, Kiran and Bitopi. I'm going to introduce you later. But first of all, let's talk about Anajori, who for the first time joining this webinar. So Anajori is a non-profit platform that engages in and promotes various initiatives that are striving for social change, leadership skills, and building entrepreneurship capabilities in the Northeast region of India, including Assam. For the past few months, Anajori has been engaging with the speaker from various fields via virtual media to create a network among the people working in the region. And Anajori has been continuously doing this webinar on every Thursday, especially focusing on gender and sexuality. And I'd like to introduce myself. I am Costa Padmapati, and I'm an assistant professor of political science at the Royal Global University. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce today's topic. So today we are going to have a very interesting topic, that is gender and sexuality and popular culture. So the first speaker, I think many of you are familiar with him, who doesn't need an introduction, but still I'd like to say about my friend, who is Kiran Keshavamurti, who is an assistant professor of English at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Guwahati. His research interests include gender and sexuality studies and modern Indian literature. His book, published by OUP India in 2016, is entitled Beyond Desire, Sexuality in Modern Tamil Literature. He has taught literacy courses in the various places on gender and sexuality. So, Kiran, over to you. Today will be the conversation style. So both the speakers will speak. Then we are going to have a Q&A sessions. আৰু যিসকলে ইংৰাজীত বুজি নাপায় তেওঁলোকে অসমীয়াটো প্ৰশ্ন কৰিব পাৰে। মই ট্ৰেন্সলেট কৰি দিম, কাৰণ এজন স্পিকাৰ অসমীয়া নহয়। সো কিন্তু আপোনালোকে প্ৰশ্ন সুধিবলৈ কুণ্ঠাবোধ নকৰিব। So we try to make this conversations bilingual today. Thank you so much. So Kiran, over to you.
Thank you, Kaustav. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
so I have been the host of this series on gender and sexuality on behalf of Anajori on every Thursday, and I never thought that I would actually end up speaking myself. I thought I would remain on the fringes and and not in the limelight. But this has been a good opportunity to actually talk about something that I think all of you can relate to a certain extent, because you wanted a topic that would be accessible to all and would not be something which would be too niche or too specific. I thought of maybe just signposting a few issues that just came across to me randomly on largely on Hindi cinema, but also on South Indian cinema, which I have been watching for a while now. If you look at the larger or the longer history of Indian cinema, especially Bollywood, there are certain cultural differences. There are certain differences that you do notice between, let's say, Bollywood cinema and largely speaking, South Indian cinema, historically speaking. And I do notice that there are quite a few stark differences. One of the things that I kind of notice, and I can't say I've watched a lot of cinema from across the decades. I've watched a few well-known popular films. I have listened to a lot of film songs, and sometimes you're not even sure about the film, but you know the song. So it's an interesting phenomenon, especially in the South Asian or in the Indian subcontinent, that you have this phenomenon where you can separate songs from films and think of songs themselves as a kind of a microcosm of the film. It's almost like a microcosm of the larger mood of the film, and very often they have an autonomy, they have a life of their own, which is actually quite different from the film itself. And it's not surprising that very often we know of songs, we're familiar with songs, but we don't know the films themselves. Now, one of the things that I notice, of course, is one of the let's begin actually. Let's begin with the similarities first. One of the things that we actually notice across various regional cinemas is the kind of gender stereotypes that we do encounter. We're kind of familiar with them now. I mean, it's all of us know them, and they persist even today in some films. So you have, for example, an obsession with the family, right? You have sacralization of the family, an obsession with the family, gender roles, the way they're being produced within the family, and we have seen, for example, the figure of the mother, right? And why does a mother play such an important role? And we have seen endless number of films where the mother and I think I started the mother because that's what comes to me first, because the mother, more than the hero, the heroine, I mean, there are lots of formulaic heroes and heroines for the longest time in history, but the mother, for me, has been this figure who has been largely unchanging until recently, right? We've always had widowed mothers, single mothers, or mothers who are married who have husbands, but somehow, they end up either being subordinate, or they're widowed and they're marginalized in certain ways, but they're also very dominant for that very reason. And they end up having very special relationship with their sons, right? So the mother-son equation becomes really very important. And you also see how the mother's authority is delegated through the son. The daughter-in-law becomes subordinate mother. There's a power struggle between the two, very often mediated through the husband or the slash son. And so we see that in South Indian cinema, there have been umpteen number of mother figures. There are innumerable examples of mothers and widowed mothers, as well as mothers married.
Hello,
Hello.
Kiran, can you
I think
Kiran,
he's,
can you hear? I think Kiran is having network
yeah,
issue.
yeah. I think he lost connectivity. Yeah,
Yeah, can anyone from Enajari team can contact him?
yeah. Wait.
Kiran, can you hear us now? Can you hear us,
Sorry,
Kiran?
yes, sorry, I got disconnected. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, it's okay.
Uh,
Please continue.
yes, so I was just saying that the figures that you
Uh,
is yeah.
Kiran,
Can you?
maybe if you stop your video, then I guess the voice will come clearly. You can switch off your
Uh,
video.
yes, I will. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I was that. Yeah, I might have a slightly fluctuating internet connection, but yes. So I was just saying that the figure of the mother, and its own of mothers having their own lives, mothers having their own inner lives, sexual lives, and of course it comes along with many other factors, along with capitalism, consumerism, You know, I all names of also talking joke about which is Nina Gupta and her together for the first time, and Masab and plays. You know, she has the meteor role, and the daughter is someone who is. You know, who is a fashion designer. She has her own fashion. Mother's used to be a popular actress, and she is she's her. But you see Nina Gupta's he's someone who
Hello? Kiran,
girl.
sir, your voice is breaking.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah.
why. Uh,
Uh,
now, yeah, uh,
it's still breaking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still breaking. Maybe you want to connect with your phone, maybe? I would like to request all the participants kindly be on online. There are some technical glitches which the speaker trying to resolve, but I'll request you kindly don't leave the session. Kindly cooperate.
yes. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, yeah. So I'm just speaking from my phone, but yeah. So I was just saying that that the family becomes a very critical institution and a site of power in a lot of Hindi cinema, and this is also true largely of South Indian cinema too. But I do see, for example, changes, as I was saying earlier. You know, there are Netflix series. It's interesting how the emergence of the multiplex, as well as the emergence of alternative sites of social media, as well as, you know, Netflix and a whole lot of other platforms, have you know, made it possible to uh, imagine other kinds of heroes, other kinds of mothers, people who have private lives, you know, and even for example, you know, the breakdown of the hero figure itself. You know, I find it very interesting that now we have actors who don't necessarily have the same stereotypical masculine body. They don't occupy as much screen space in terms of time or in terms of space. They are you know, small town men. You know, I find it interesting the kinds of Hindi movies that are being produced now set in small towns like Kanpur and Lucknow. You know, you have lower middle class or even working class characters. You also have you know, alternative kinds of intimacy now. I mean, whether they are queer or not is emerging now. We do have, you know, more recent instances of queer intimacies, and of course, we also see now, even in Netflix and in other platforms, where you have, you know, queer stories, queer narratives as a necessary ingredient, you know, which sells nowadays as part of series as well as films which are released on Netflix or on other Hotstar and other platforms. And you know, you also notice, for example, I've been watching a lot of Malayalam cinema now, and we notice, I noticed, for example, in a movie like Kumlangi Nights, for example, where you have an imagination of the everyday. Again, set in a small town Kerala, or even if it's not a small town, you know, it's portrayed or captured in all its simplicity. You know, I mean, there is, of course, the incursions of modernity are there. You do have instances of technology being used to mediate friendships, love affairs. I watched this other fantastic film, Malayalam film called See You Soon, which is again, has multiple frames, multiple screens. You have, it's about a love affair between a man and a woman, but it's entirely shot during the pandemic. And it is about how their love affair, which of course later on turns into a kind of a tragedy, is completely mediated through virtual media, through screens like the one that we're using right now, multiple screens, multiple timescapes. And So, you have all these very interesting experiments that are happening right now in terms of showing you the everyday, and also through the everyday, also trying to do away with a lot of gender and sexual stereotypes, especially because, now gone, I think gone is the era when you actually had an impeccable or a perfect hero, a typical hero. You have multiple characters now. You have many minor characters. You don't necessarily have a central figure. You have the debunking of myths around masculinity and femininity. For the longest time, you had women, of course, being very typically portrayed as passive or as docile, as asexual. Now you also have women who have their own inner lives, their own sexual lives. You have deceptive characters, which are very interesting. You have major characters, protagonists who are deceptive. They do not index nobility or virtue, and they don't have any moral qualms. You have so many gangster films that have been produced in the post-liberalization era, where you have male and female characters who do not have any kind of moral scruples. In fact, it reflects the absurdity of the normal world. You have an underground world which is an absurd reflection of the hypocrisy of social and sexual norms. You have so many instances of how Bollywood and to a certain extent also South Indian cinema, Kollywood especially, has been, and Mollywood as it's called in Kerala, has been producing a lot of alternative cinema in terms of questioning, gender and sexual stereotypes, thinking of alternative storylines. Sometimes, films that don't even have a plot. I find it very interesting that it's about nothing at all, really. It's about the everyday, and it's really about nothing. I mean, there is no teleology, there is no grand climax. Lovers reuniting, none of these things. So I think I find it very interesting that a lot of cinema nowadays, there is also a realistic trend, a trend of producing social realism of a different kind nowadays, and through the everyday also bringing you, showing you the ambiguities and the ironies of human relationships and intimacies. They're blurring moral binaries, ethical binaries. And they're also allowing you to think about, let's say, for example, female sexuality, for example, in a very powerful and radical manner. I think I've already told many of my friends and people about this film called Per Anbu, which is a Tamil movie which came out 2 years back, which is again a very powerful and radical critique of female sexual norms. And it's about, the Mammootty, this very well-known Malayalam actor, plays the role of a single father there. And it's about his wife has abandoned him, and his wife has almost, I guess, she has an affair with another man, and she leaves with him, and she's not willing to take care of her kind of mentally and physically challenged daughter. And so Mammootty takes up the responsibility of taking care of their daughter, and ends up having a very intimate relationship with his daughter, which you rarely see, which you didn't see for the longest time. So one always has this very relative perspective in mind. One's always making these intertextual connections with other films, other books that you've read. I find it fascinating that for the first time I'm seeing, I haven't seen, I may be wrong, but this is for the first time actually seeing a very intimate relationship with the father and a daughter, a very candid, caring relationship, which is very tactile, partly also because the daughter cannot speak. And and it's also about the father's acknowledgement of the fact that his daughter has sexual needs, which I thought was very unusual and radical for, considering the history of Tamil cinema. And I do feel like there have been a lot of progressive moves, a lot of radical progressive moves in the history of cinema. But there are also a lot of, at the same time, we do have a lot of, stubborn orthodoxies. It's not as though everything has changed. We do have still remnants of, for example, sentimental mothers, for example, mothers who are sentimental mothers who are there to put their daughters in place. You do have patriarchal fathers. You do have patriarchal mothers. Very often, you see the way serials, especially. I mean, one should not ignore the fact that serials that in different Indian languages are extremely pernicious, and they're the ones that actually penetrate many middle class households. And you notice how they are the ones that shape the imagination of a lot of people, their imagination of family and what they think people are like. So very often the man is not blamed. The man, doesn't take any responsibility. Women are pitted against each other, especially the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, and their power struggles are mediated through the son of the husband. And that is still true of a lot of serials. But things are changing as far as a lot of commercial cinema, partly, as I said, because of the multiplex, and also because you have other platforms where you can have a certain democratization of different kinds of characters and figures and plots, and maybe even the lack of a plot. You have so many different kinds of variety now, which you didn't have earlier. You have different. You also have actors who don't play a very actors who don't have a very long shelf life, like the way they did, because there was a time when 30, 40 years back, films ran for months together, and you had actors who had a long shelf life, especially if they were main, hero or the heroine. They acted for at least 10, 15 years, at least for women, at least. And then, men, of course, had a longer shelf life because, for, of course, obvious patriarchal reasons. And for the longest time, you also had a large age difference between the hero and the heroine, the male actor and the female actor. But even then, in the late 90s, I remember there were a bunch of films that showed intimacies between older women and younger men. And that became a kind of a small, short, brief trend, which didn't last very long. And then, of course, you had, for example, shows like Made in Heaven, which again was, I think, very interesting. Of course, it largely dealt with elite Delhi and the marriage circles of elite Delhi. But you also had, for example, a gay plot there, which was actually very unusual and very matter of fact. They didn't make a big deal of it. It was part of the film, and it was just very sensuously shot, very well done. And again, like I said, the Tamil movie, the Perandu, again, there was no shaming of the female characters there. There's a female character in the film who, again, plays a very deceptive role, and she kind of seduces and marries Mammootty when she's already married. And generally, if it had been a typical Tamil movie, the woman would have been shamed for being a loose or for being a whore. But nothing of that sort happened here. It was just very matter of fact and done with. So I like the normalization of a lot of female desire, especially when it's not conforming to marriage and motherhood. I'm very happy that now you have these instances, and you kind of wonder why it did not happen earlier. There are also films like there's another film which was another Tamil movie, which was a very powerful critique of caste and sexuality. It was called Pariyerum Perumal, and that also was it was screened on Amazon Prime, and it's again about intercaste struggles in Tirunelveli, southern Tamil Nadu, and it was a very powerful portrayal of a friendship, in fact, between an upper caste woman and a lower caste Dalit man, and it was a very frank portrayal, and you knew exactly what caste the characters belonged to, because for the longest time, Tamil movies would not mention the caste, but it was just a very obviously kind of thinly veiled allusion to the caste groups and the social and historical milieu that they belong to. But this film was very explicit, and it was about a friendship. And I find that also a refreshing move, to be able to show friendships, cross-gender friendships, without necessarily romanticizing or sexualizing them. And it remains a friendship throughout the film. So that was, again, very, very refreshing for me, that you see friendships which are not sexualized across caste groups, And of course, the only problem with the film was that the woman again was portrayed as a very, naive. A woman was very naive and didn't seem to be aware of caste realities. But nonetheless, the man is, of course, forced to be aware. He's constantly reminded of the fact that he's Dalit, and. The entire film is again shot in Tirunelveli, and it's very well done. And there's also very interesting characterization of the dog. The man has a pet dog who becomes an allegory of humanism and humanist love, and there are lots of angles and layers to it. It's very well done, and till the very end they remain friends. Of course, it does not resolve the question of caste, so it wasn't a pat ending, but it just brings you the ironies, the violence, the ironies, and the ambiguities of caste intimacy. So it is very well done. So maybe I will just stop with this. Just a few kind of signposting of a few issues and a few things that I've noticed changing in recent cinema. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kiran, for covering such an interesting and important topic. And so I have few questions for you, but that will come to later.
Sure.
So next we have another speaker who is Bitopi Dutta, a researcher and a social worker, PhD DSU Ireland, co-founder of Queer Adda and Hukia. She writer of several books on gender, displacement, and indigenous communities in the Northeast India. So, Bitopi, please start your. You have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you, Kostav. Just now the power has gone off, so I'm sitting in absolute darkness, and I don't know how far my phone's internet will accompany me, but I'll try my best to do what I have. So
Sure.
Rather than seeing my face in the dark, I'd rather switch off my video. I think that would be a better idea, no? I'll just speak.
Sure.
Yeah, with my video off. Yes. So first of all, thank you very much for having me here. And Enajori is like home, so I was not expecting to be a speaker here myself. But yeah, here I am. So good to be on the other side too. Like, when Kiran was actually talking about, the ideal depiction of the mother and the family, which is very heteronormative, and which is definitely very correct. I was actually, okay, the power has come, so I can switch on my video.
Sure.
And then I was actually thinking about, do you remember this film, Karan Arjun?
Yes.
It was a hit back then, back in those
Absolutely.
days. Rakhi was
Ideal
there, and
mother.
how she was waiting for, that's right, how she was waiting for her
Both
two
the
sons
son.
to come and avenge all the wrongs that was actually done to her. That was back those days. But even now, Bahubali, the mother of Bahubali, and how she's imprisoned, and how Bahubali actually comes later to rescue her,
Yes.
which is also a very recent, South Indian film. Then when Kiran was actually talking about the ideal family, I was reminded of this film, which was again another hit, Hum Saath Saath Hai, where all these four brothers are such good brothers to each other, and they have, like, the most docile wives possible, who are like
True.
endowed with all feminine qualities of being caring, considerate, respectful, soft, humble, everything, like, uh, the idea of a family, and the role of the women in it, especially the women who actually gets the house together, because she is so sacrificing, and that ideal woman is also sort of there. So in Hum Saath Saath Hai, we actually see this depiction of the ideal bahu, the daughter-in-law, uh, or the wife. I mean, their role in Hum Saath Saath Hai, the role as the daughter-in-law becomes first, because this daughter-in-laws have yet not become mother-in-laws, so they have yet not become somewhat closer to the head of the household. So how they have to actually put the household's interest in ahead of them, and how they have to behave as the mature one, and in all those depiction of womanhood in several roles, like may it be in Karan Arjun's mother, the mother that Rakhi played, or this, the ideal bahu that the women played in Hum Saath Saath Hai. And then again there's this another hit movie called Maine Pyar Kiya. Salman Khan
Yes.
and Bhagyashree were there, and Tu Chal Main Aayi, that song, and how Bhagyashree actually handles her household work, and she has to finally sacrifice her date to go out with Salman Khan because she has to manage so many household works, and she is doing it cheerfully, happily, while also slightly flirting with her boyfriend and things like that, right? So, and then how after a whole days of work and they meet, it's all about how physically close they get, and this intoxication of, the way the heteronormative relationship is shown in such um, unrealistic, as if there's an intoxication in that sort of a relationship. I mean, it's more about, it's less about the women but more about the virtues and qualities that she has as an Indian woman, which is again very problematic. So I was actually, as Kiran was talking, I was actually getting reminded of all of those, movies. So true. Mm. um, and then I was again started thinking about, what I was also planning to like talk about today is about our own region. Like if we talk about, and I wouldn't go far, let's just stick to Assam. If you look at Assamese Bihu songs, especially the modern Assamese Bihu songs, I actually have a list that I can actually sort of spell it out. Wait. There's this song that I actually saw today, and it's called Pitti Ke Muhari. Okay, the essence of the song is that, the boy, the dhulia, starts singing that, how he wished that the dancer, that the female dancer, the nasani, was a fruit that he could actually squash and, smash and, drink her up. And how, see, he wished if she was a fruit, then he would have loved to actually touch her smooth skin, something like that. So it's like extreme commodification of women. I mean, I don't even have words for it, and it came out in 2019, so it's very recent. So, and then another one which was very popular, we already know, disco bhonti nana seba beya lage, koa babe tumi beya palai saga. I think almost everyone in Assam has actually listened to it, um, right? So it's basically talking about how a good girl should be. A good girl does not go dancing to a disc, and she stays home and things like that. And another one, I was actually not very surprised. I don't know why I was surprised, but I was a little bit surprised to actually find this another song. It's actually it is another Bihu song, and Jumin Garg has also actually sung it, and it's called it sings like Komal Komal Tomar Buku Khani Suisabo Monjay. Like it's your, I want to touch. I feel like touching your soft breast. So it cannot be more explicit than it. There's another
Yes.
Bihu song titled Pokhila. You can actually search all of this in YouTube, and it talks about, it talks about how this girl who has probably several boyfriends or probably have multiple relationship, and how this boy comes in and says that, you know how the people talk about you because you are running from one boy to another. Why don't you just concentrate on me and we can actually settle down? That's how a good woman should be, and things like that. There's another song called it says makeup, like and it says that in our village women do not wear makeup but still they look good, so why do you sort of wear makeup? So it's basically saying, women who wear makeup are somewhat not the ideal women, and it's just extravaganza that actually women indulge themselves into, and that's sort of a narrative. So my point is, this sort of and look at the paradox here. These songs themselves are so extremely voyeuristic. So like, it's not even being subtly, it's not even subtly commodifying women. It's like, directly and very in very strong words commodifying women. comparing them to fruits, talking about their bodies in a way which probably no woman wants to hear as, and actually the woman is actually made to dance, smiling to that song, and it's actually taken as good compliment or taken as good advice from the man. So this man who was singing, and none of these girls actually sing songs which advise the man in this way or commodifies the man that way. But this man, who are the singers, are actually commodifying women, but at the same time also advising them to be a better women. So that's something that like blows me out, like, and blows me away. Like, one hand, one is being so objectifying women at one level, and another level, that same person is actually advising women to be a good women. um so it's like, that's also sort of my point, like, and there's at no point that these women actually question this voyeuristic and objectification that the man does with the women, and they actually play along with it. And this is true for our own bihu songs, modern bihu songs, basically. And these songs have millions of views, and they have lakhs of views, and they're very popular songs. So and basic and
Hello. Uh,
Hello, I think
Bitopi,
we lost her.
yeah,
Yeah,
you need to send a message.
yeah, wait, just a second.
sorry, I think I got disconnected for a second.
Yes, yes. Now we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, that this bihu, and which are like this sort of content, which are so voyeuristic adult content, not in a nice way. It's very misogynistic content, and these are like accessible by all age groups. And children, actually nowadays children grow up listening to these songs. So the popular culture in that we see in modern bihu songs is something that we, and these are things like, these are things that are never questioned, actually. And people actually take fun in playing this song. So
True.
that's where I also feel like, when we talk about popular culture in Assam, we talk about songs, and interestingly enough, this sort of commodification and objectification has increased more in recent years than they were. I mean, in the traditional bihu songs, if you see, because there are women expressing her sexuality, and it's not a derogatory expression of one sexual desire, or sexuality, like the way it has become now. I would not say that everything in the past was perfect. No, it was not. But it was not like this also, that we have such obscene content coming up, and having millions of views, and this you know uh, I mean, and we actually let it go, and we accept it, and that is something I find very extremely problematic. Not only as a woman, but also, like, I think every parent should also um, be concerned about it. Um, I mean, I think no parent would want their children to actually listen and grow up listening to such misogynistic content, right? So I'm being very clear and direct about it, like, what does this extreme misogynistic and objectifying content of a present day bihu songs, like, what does it like really talk about our popular culture right now, and and the way women are actually represented um, in it. So that's sort of one point. Um, but I wouldn't say that's the end of it. Of course, I mean, there are changes, and for example, I actually saw a video song. I mean, I saw a video of a song which was recently released. I cannot remember the video. I actually looked for it up today, but I couldn't really locate the video. But it was about a lesbian relationship. I mean, it wasn't like, I wouldn't say it is the ideal or a perfect depiction of a lesbian relationship. It was basically about how two girls uh, are seeing each other while one of them has a boyfriend, but they're not really speaking it out. But it was not like it was as if, I mean, it was not very clearly. I couldn't really understand what it was trying to say, but at least there was a proper, there's progress, like there significant progress from what I actually see in the view songs. But then but then again, if we look around us, because I'm talking more specifically about women and the heteronormativity that's actually shown. I mean, the women who are actually shown completely as objects vis-a-vis the men who desire them for their objectifying qualities only. So, but then we also have, for example, I think most of us have actually watched. Now, let me go to Hollywood. We have watched Wonder Woman, haven't we? Many of us have. And how
Yes,
this the Wonder Woman, the women from Themyscira, the women who is Diana, and where this whole bunch of women who live together, and there are no men in that. Doesn't mean that they hate men or something, but they're actually shown as some, I mean, some species who are like higher than humans, and they are all women. But because they are all women doesn't mean that they are like docile, um, understanding and sacrificing women. I mean, they are also warriors. They are also mothers. I mean, they are human beings. Basically, they're shown as human beings, and it's interesting how they are actually shown as equal human beings in uh, uh, they are actually shown as equal human. These women are shown as equal human beings by including them or by portraying them as a different species than humans. I mean, that's also something that is something that actually took my attention. Like oh, is it? I mean, do we really? I mean, is it? Are they trying to show that we need a different spaces to be like respectful for women or not? And it could be. I mean, I'm just trying to show. I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm just trying to kind of say that how in that uh, small place called Themyscira, where this ideal place where these women are equal human beings, and the conditions in which they're actually kept preserved from the outside world and things like that. So it has so many layers to it. And on the other hand, we have Harley Quinn, no, of Suicide Squad, where her relationship with the Joker is very toxic, and that's something that really was celebrated by lots of people, because the passion that Harley Quinn actually has with Joker um, is despite being so toxic that it's intoxicating, something similar to what we saw in the movie Kabir Singh, right? And this abusive relationship, but people are drawn into it because it was so passionate. Something similarly like here in the Suicide Squad, where the Joker constantly puts Harley Quinn to test to prove her love for him, and she loves her so much that she is even ready to fight sorry she is even ready to fight and even jump into a bowl of lava, or into a burning fire for that matter. And and she actually jumps into it, and how at the end moment the Joker just catches her, pulls her back, and kind of kisses her, because he's like really baffled by how much she loves the Joker, or baffled by her loyalty. And then so that was, I mean, that was really clearly very criticized also, because because of the toxicity that it kind of entailed. But at the same time, it was also very much celebrated also. Somehow this toxic masculine man gets celebrated in popular culture in not only in our country, but I think worldwide. That's there, and it comes at a huge cost for women, of course. I mean there would not be any disagreement about it. But then I haven't actually watched this movie. There's this another movie of Harley Quinn itself, where she actually has broken up with the Joker, and she tries to find her own identity for herself. So I haven't really watched it, but I find the concept very interesting, and I really like to sort of watch it. So when I actually see all this different depictions of women, gender, sexuality, or queer, and in all of this particular movies that I've actually quoted, there is no one queer character. and all the best that I actually expect in situations like this, or in, like, in narratives like this is that, queer characters are portrayed as funny comedy characters. Dostana, for example, the way it was done was not really nice. And how, or for example, how or at best what happens to queer characters in such films most of the times is that they become a sidekick or best friend of the male character. It's also a very tokenistic representation. But then again, coming to popular culture again, this latest film of Ayushmann Khurrana, what is it called? I forgot the name. Um,
Which one? The queer one?
What was
Subh
this?
Mangal Jada Sabda,
Yeah,
I guess.
Shubh Mangal Jada Sabdan. So it was a mainstream queer cinema, but then again, what I felt is that it was just replacing the girlfriend and boyfriends with, I mean, a heterosexual couple with a
True, true.
homosexual
Exactly.
couple, and it was very homonormative again. Then, even when you talk about popular culture trying to be queer sensitive, how sensitive has it been? Like, really? So that's also something there. I think in terms of feminist narrative, I think. It has come, popular culture have come a long way from how it from the days of Karan Arjun till now. I'm not saying that it's like it's a perfect progression. I mean, no, it's not, because clearly our bihu songs, or clearly the depiction of women in Bahubali. In Bahubali also, there's this mother who waits for Bahubali to get rescued, but then again there's this fierce women who is like fearless. So this like very, what I'm saying, polarized depiction of women, like either this very fearless, fierce women, or this very, weak or docile women waiting for submissive women, waiting for a man to kind of rescue her. So there's not, or say the man who is always brave, the hero is always brave, or things. So there's, it's very polarized sort of a you know uh, portrayal that's there, whether it be men or may it be women. And even or even if it's a queer character, it's also like a very stereotypical depiction of queer character that we frequently get to see. But then movies like Submangal Jada Sabdam have come in, but then again, you know although the characters in themselves are not polarized, but they are like, essentially kind of, I would say they are just integrated. They're just an add-on to the heteronormative narrative. I mean, they're not an independent narrative in themselves. That's what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, so what I'm trying to, then I think when I talked about Hollywood, about the character of Harley Quinn, and about Themyscira and the Wonder Woman who's Diana. So when I look at popular culture, I actually see this different narratives sort of trying to do justice to you know marginalized sexualities, including women and queer people, but somehow they are like still sort of struggling with it. That's where I sort of feel in popular sort of culture. I mean, Wonder Woman, I still feel the most comfortable with of all the films that I've actually seen. But then, yeah, but even with the characters like Harley Quinn and things like that. So that's also special. That's also there. So there's this different. I mean, there's this different degrees of how gender and sexuality has been portrayed, and how the question of equality of representation of all genders still struggles is something that remains very consistent. For example, say I would like to see a woman who is a non-voyeuristic depiction of women in a film. I would like to see a man, um, who is like who is who is a equal human being, like, and who could be sensitive, who could also be sort of not sensitive. I mean, a regular human being. I mean, not someone like a man who's, I definitely love it if a man is depicted to be sensitive. But then again, then we do not also need to kind of create another polar. That's what I actually say. But I mean, I see. it sort of
Looking
like
at
that.
this topic,
Sorry?
Hello.
Yeah.
I guess someone
I think
has switched on your
looking at this,
audio. Kindly switch it off. Yes. We can do the question answer session after the speaker is done.
I
Kindly
think
wait. Kindly wait.
yeah.
Bitopi,
Yeah, I
yes.
think I've sort of covered most of what I wanted to say, but I really wanted to also, bring our focus into, our regional, popular culture, and the how the question of misogyny in it and its connection, because these are also a part of rape culture. I mean, you cannot just go on about singing how you wish the girl was a fruit and you could squash her and just drink her up or touch her skin like you are touching the skin of a very nice tender fruit. I mean, that's definitely not a way of go, but the amount of acceptance that songs like that have had is problematic, and we haven't really stopped to really discuss this. So thank you for actually and there's a and it's also important to talk about the connection of this sort of portrayal with the rape culture. It's institutionalized, not only institutionalized, it's like normalizes rape culture in so many ways through art, and which is so horrible, because art is something that is supposed to be transformatory in a better way for a better world. And because I think art is powerful because it involves our emotions in it. And when we feel for a thing, and when we are motivated to act in a particular way, but if popular culture is used in a way to motivate us in a misogynistic sort of a road, then that's sort of very problematic. So and even and I agree with Kiran when he says that there are different web series is coming up in OTT platforms, which is actually pushing the boundaries. But again, then really how much of an alternative space that is. I mean, look at the amount of original, for example, languages that Netflix and Amazon takes in. It's mostly Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, Malayalam, and Hindi. I mean, there's hardly any SMS content, or say Bhojpuri content or any other. So many we have so many different languages content on Netflix or Amazon, and there's so many other independent films and artistic creations coming up, but are not really finding their way into the OTT platforms. But even within the alternative, there is kind of a popular culture in it. So how and that is something that we have also, like I've also faced with our film Firefly Jonakipura, where we actually tried everything that I have discussed. Not we tried. I mean, the director Prakash has actually tried. There's this. You actually have a women character, who's like shown in a non-viristic sort of a way. So I wouldn't go to Firefly Junaki Porwa in that context, but we could discuss it later in the discussions if we want to. But these are just certain sort of problematics of popular culture that I wanted to sort of highlight. Thank you.
Sure.
madam,
Sure.
can I add?
Excuse me. Do you want to give a comment or something, sir?
Yes, sir. Looking at this
Your voice is not clear. Your voice is not clear, sir. I guess his voice is not clear. So thank you, Bitopi, for such a wonderful presentation. Lots of interesting references, especially the Bihu songs. And
through Hollywood.
sir, your voice is not coming properly. Just wait for 2 minutes. I'll just give the remarks. Then you
I'm
can
not
answer.
interrupting. I'm simply listening to you, ma'am.
So your voice is not coming clearly.
I'm not speaking, ma'am. I'm simply listening to you.
Hello, Anajari team, can you resolve this issue? Because I think his voice is not coming clearly. Can you mute him from some time? Then,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
because it's lots of disturbances happening. I cannot moderate
Yeah,
that.
yeah, okay.
Okay. Bitopi, thank you so much for your wonderful presentations and covering so many issues. The Bihu songs, of course. And so regarding the Harley Quinn, the second movie you have referred, I have seen actually, it's quite interesting. She has moved on with the breakup, and here it's showing her as a female bonding with other characters. And it's more like, of course, she is an anti-hero, but here they are trying to establish her as a female superhero. So it's quite interesting. You should watch that, as so many.
Oh, thank you for telling me that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's and
because
probably it is also because there's a lot of criticism for how Harley Quinn and Joker's relationship was portrayed
yeah,
in earlier movies. So probably they actually, yeah. So that's good to know. Yeah, thank you.
yeah. So here they have shown the female bonding. She has with a teenager, then couple of women are bonding and they are fighting together. So it's quite interesting take. So you should watch. So now I think I should couple of questions. I'll start, and both of you can answer. So the first interesting topic covered by both of you is the gender roles that mostly covered by the popular media, the mother and the son dynamic. So mostly all the movies we have seen basically the mother and the son relations and the sacrificing mother. And we yet to see a very significant daughter and the mother relations movie. And if I remember, the movie that is quite remarkable was 19 April by Rituparna Ghosh. The entire movie is on the conversation between the mother and the daughter. So I think that is one of the remarkable movie that I could think of, but not many. Then, of course, Kiran, you talk about the cultural differences between South uh, and the Bollywood. But I am not, of course, I'm not an expert of Southern movies, but don't you think the Southern movies are much more patriarchal? Because we yet to see a female superstar from South. It's always larger than life heroes. And even those actresses like Jayaprada and Sridevi, they got the stardom after doing Hindi cinema. And even if you don't go much earlier, it is Tapsi Pannu, because Tapsi Pannu got recognition after doing mostly Hindi movies, because majority of the Southern movies she did are basically trash and she did not get the recognition. So that is my first question. I could be wrong. Do you think that the Southern movie are, especially the commercial cinema, is much more gender bias and patriarchal? Even they cast very like a fair skinned women from North India. They don't even cast actresses from the southern region, many movies. So what do you think about that, Kiran?
So, do you want me to answer first, or do you want?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Okay, so I think, yeah, what you say is largely true. That especially in Tamil and Telugu cinema, there is a preference for women who are fair-skinned, especially women who are from the north, maybe from Bombay, who come, and they may learn the language, they may not, because there's always anyway dubbing that's happening. There's a big dubbing industry, and so yeah, so there's a clear obsession with fair-skinned women, and there is still that love formula that sells very well. So you can't completely do away with it, yeah, despite the fact that you have a more wider space for creative expression nowadays. You still have an obsession with superheroes, heroes who can do stunts, heroes who conform to masculine stereotypes, women who are meant to be pursued, fair-skinned women very often. There used to be an earlier trend where women who were English speaking or anglicized or who seemed rather modern, quote unquote modern, had to be domesticated to conform to the roles of a traditional wife. She also underwent a change in her clothes and all that. So that staple is still there. And the few Tamil actresses that we do have, they have made it. Sometimes many of them have made it bigger in Malayalam cinema, because Malayalam cinema seems to have an alternative space. Not only have they witnessed the parallel cinema movement, they have also still continue to have alternative spaces for expression, to talk about everything from, let's say, unusual women who are from the south, who have learned the language, already speak the language, who are also women who are also indifferent to their own appearances. That's very rare to see a woman who is not being forced to be self-conscious of her sexuality and her body. I mean, she's just is what she is. I mean, she's a human being. She has her own wishes, her own desires. She has her own inner life, and that's it. So just seeing something as simple as that, in Tamil cinema for the longest time, we didn't have it. And even now, maybe there are a few kind of short movies or films that are meant for alternative spaces, not necessarily, certainly not commercial releases, which are refreshing and are showing you other kinds of female characters. And so, I think one more thing I wanted to add is also the fact that that film viewers need to also be a little bit more discerning, right? They need to look at how the camera is working. It's not just about the plot of the story, right? It's also about how a woman or a man or a transgender person is being portrayed. Right? And what work does the camera do? Simply because somebody is skimpily clad or is not wearing any clothes for the role that he or she or they are playing, doesn't necessarily make it an objectifying film. It's not necessary. It depends on how the camera is working. Right? And that's very important. I think there is, for example, some of these Zoya Akhtar films where the female character may be, let's say, a swimming instructor. She's wearing a bikini, right? But the way the camera shows her, it's not about her body. Right? The camera is not lingering over every curve, every angle. It's not about that, right? So the viewer gets a very different perspective, because see, the important thing is to try and disappoint the viewer's expectations, the viewer's voyeurisms. You need to disappoint it. You need to interrupt their gender expectations, their sexual stereotypes, right? So simply showing somebody who's skimpily clad doesn't necessarily make that a voyeuristic or a bad movie. How is it being shown, and why, and what role is it playing? And of course, there has to be also a massive improvement in scripts. The script is very important. What the words are, what the songs are. There needs to be more thought needs to be put into that. So I think largely I agree with you that there are that if not for a few exceptions, and especially in Tamil and Telugu cinema, there have been lots of blockbusters like Kabir Khan and the Telugu and Tamil version of that. Irresponsible men who can't control themselves. They need women to reform them or to mollycoddle them like mothers would. So even if the mother is gone, the woman has to play a mother-like role. So you have all these regressive stereotypes which still exist. There's no doubt about it. But I think there is more scope for improvement. I mean, in terms of scripts, in terms of finding women who are, or even transgender people to play major roles in films, who are, not being reduced to their femininity, not being reduced to their transgenderedness, but have many other complex facets to their life.
Okay. Thank you, Kiran. So next question is for Bitopi. So Bitopi, you mentioned very interesting facts about the new trend of Assamese Bihu songs being so explicit and very sexist, and sometimes it may be you may refer as a eve teasing or whatever. Like, so you said it is a very recent trend because the earlier ones were not that explicit. So why do you think that this is happening? What is the major reason for coming out such a popular explicit and sexist Bihu songs? And can you answer on that? Can you answer that question?
Yes. Looks like I cannot open my video.
Yeah, anyway. It's fine. You just answer.
Yeah. Because I think the host has disabled it. Yeah, it says. See, it's not that it's only in Assamese Bihu songs that this has. Okay, it's not that it's only in Assamese Bihu songs now that this sort of radical sexism, the way I say, has come. I mean there are also lots of Bengali films also, like, you will you just look it over, you'll see a lot of actually this sort of problematic content in cinema around bodies, about around yeah, sister-in-laws,
Yes,
Kamala
Bhabis. Yeah.
body, that body. Yes, yes, there are lots. Yeah, in I think in Bhojpuri industry also. I mean, there are lots actually sort of coming up, and the way I see it is like, uh, I wouldn't be very specific in saying that this is the reason why it has actually come up, but I see it as connected to the larger waves of how under capitalism women has come to be very commodified, because women's bodies have been commodified, women's sexuality has been commodified, and because they sell, and they sell in a way because, like Kiran said, because they're depicted in a particular way, and they are they're sort of written around, or they're kind of constructed around a particular narrative that gives power to the men, right?
Mm,
The more commodified women are, the more powerful are the men. The more human and equal the women would be, the less powerful would be the men. And the reason that sexualization of women or commodification of women has become a hit nowadays is not only because people are lustrous, or people are voyeuristic, but also because men want, or like not just men, like people want to feel powerful. And in this patriarchal society that we are living in, capitalism has really played a strong role in strengthening the sense of power that men have by dominating, I mean, by having a certain sort of a power over women. And in this case, I would say, sort of, it's very sexualized. So I
sure.
would say this is very much there. And the more and more we are actually going into a market driven society where everything has become a commodity and women have been reduced to it. In the past, it was not so much about the market. I mean, we had our own societies. In Assam also, we had systems where women were also a very important women played a very important part in the economy, because we also had a system of commons. Land was commonly owned by both men and women. They were seen as, equally economically productive beings. I mean, women, and I would not say women are always equal to men, but relatively the
Mm,
position, the status that women had was much better. I mean, I would say that is true for the whole of Northeast, because we had been based in a system of commons, and that's now kind of disintegrating with the mining. Because, for example, now with the mining coming in, all our systems of commons have actually gone away, and money has actually taken over the market with coal coming in, and it has led to a lot of deepening of patriarchy in there. So, I mean, the reason I'm saying is that, uh, there's a lot of things actually going on in there, which is actually eroding our traditional structures, which are more gender friendly. I would not say that they were perfectly gender friendly, they're perfectly gender equal. No, they are not, but they were not as commodifying and objectifying of women than they are today, because back then nobody really gained by doing only that. I mean, if women were only sexual beings, they would never be allowed to go out and work in the fields, and then that would reduce the economic agricultural productivity. So, I mean, so women, and because women are out there using their bodies in a way similar to men, so that sends out a very different message, the way I would say. So, but that now is sort of diminishing. Women have been reduced more and more to objects, and this world that we are right now living in, this in the capitalism neoliberal era that we are living in, gains the most by reducing women to sexual beings. Look at, and this is not only in in terms of popular culture. Look into every occupation. Where are women? It's mostly men. Even cooking and kitchen has, the moment it has taken a public space, most of the chefs are men. Even
yes,
that has been taken over by men. So there's
true.
a there's an increase of male domination in each sphere. And I'm not making it up. It is statistically relevant. You just, anybody can just go and look up. And when I say things like this, I've often been told that I'm being too negative and I'm being too radical in my view, that I'm being posing an extreme view. I mean, I wish I was posing an extreme view. I really wish it was, but it actually is the truth. I mean, the numbers say it. I'm not even saying it. I mean, we do not need like really rocket science to make up a theory like this. It is there. So I see the popular culture, the bridging. I mean, Assam. I mean, the question of Assam or Assam belongs to the. I mean, it's not out of. It's not located in Vekam. We are affected by what's going on worldwide. So I think it's also about what is happening sort of worldwide. And yeah, I think that's probably so. Although I do not think that the reason is only artistic and voyeuristic mentalities of people, but it's also increasing sexualization of women by the market, and the sense of power that it gives to patriarchy, that privileges men over women in a very dehumanizing way. And I'm not saying that it's very good for men, it's not good for men, it's dehumanizing men more than before. It's like it poses. I mean, if the more we pose our existence over by dominating another, we cannot be full human beings, right? Like it dehumanizes. Paulo Freire said, the dehumanization of the oppressor, like in this
Sure.
case, how patriarchy. So that's what I mean, I would like to look at it as. I mean, it's a very deeper problem. I would not say that the artists are to be blamed. No, I'm not only saying, it's also a very structural problem. It's the attack is not personal, but it just, I mean, the good that visual media actually brings these things out like on our face, because when you look at it, when we actually listen to it, we feel it is more real rather than just reading a paper or talking about it, right? But when we actually say somebody actually doing it, and because cinema or say songs or videos are such where we actually see that happening, it probably could be an alarm, a call for all of us to sort of wake up and question this. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Bitopi. I totally agree about whatever you said. And I'll ask one round of questions. So anybody who interested to ask question can write their comments in the comment sections, or simply you can unmute. So the next question may be for both of you. And Kiran, you mentioned that you can see some changes in the recent gender narratives in various platforms, and like new kind of stories are coming. So you are a little hopeful about that, and also you talked about the multiplex culture, where different sort of stories were told. But if you see the main mainstream media and the commercial cinema, that the 200 crore club movies, same in both South and Bollywood, it is exactly the same. It is same very very supportive role of the women and the very macho man. That has nothing much changed actually. The 90s trend is coming again. And why is it happening? And for Bitopi, you talked about the various social structure and the gender role. So do you feel
Hello, Kaustav sir.
it is almost the same, the both in real life and the mainstream media? Nothing much has changed, to be honest. So both of you, first Kiran, you go, then Bitopi can answer.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that I think a lot of it has to do with the economics of it. Partly precisely because you have a multiplex, you need to have those formulaic films in order to break even and to make some profit. Otherwise, if you have a small budget film, or if you have an alternative storyline, then a lot of people who are small time filmmakers, first time filmmakers, new producers, they are fine. Even if you have 50 people in the theater, I mean, they may have multiple screenings. They may be also part of for foreign film circuits. So you have all these other options, and I think nowadays filmmakers may not be full-time filmmakers either. They're part-time filmmakers. They do something else, which is their mainstay. But then they also make movies on the sides. They make very interesting films. If you go to YouTube, there are so many young people who are amateurs, quote unquote amateurs. They're not part of any film institute. They've not been trained, but still they make very interesting short films in a very professional manner, but with a minimal means. Minimal video camera, minimal. It's very, or even a cell phone. So it's fascinating the kinds of forms of creativity that we see nowadays. But I think it's just simply because you have the multiplex now. You can have a variety of commercial blockbusters rubbing shoulders with very non-mainstream, sensitive, nuanced films. And I think the audience now also has the freedom to say yes or no. I mean, they can choose to see what they want to see. And it's also high time that besides, of course, the economies of scale and the production and all that, and the ticket prices and all that, we need to also challenge the audience's intelligence and get out of a certain vicious cycle, because you can't. How long will you keep saying that this will not sell because they won't understand it? But they will not understand it as long as you don't challenge their understanding. So I think that it has to go both ways.
Okay, okay. Bitopi, your answer for this, and also if you want to talk about your movie Junaki Porua also.
Sorry, I missed your question towards the end because my internet went off. Can you just say that again
Uh,
briefly?
Sure, sure. So I talked about like both of basically Kiran talked about the changes that is happening in the in OTP platform and others, like new stories are coming about alternative sexuality and the women. But if we see the still the mainstream media and the this 200 crore club movies, they're still the same, whether it is South or Bollywood, even Assamese commercial cinema also. Like it is always the hero is playing the main character, and the women is the obviously the supporting character, and same very macho man they are showing, and nothing much has changed from what they have been portraying from the 90s. That some of the movies you also mentioned about very ridiculous roles has been assigned to women, like the like why do you think so? Or also you feel that is same also in our society that we belong? Because if they see women like that way, like who very positive, very accommodating, and that sort of, so that is the question is about. Yeah.
Um, well, the reason the mainstream movies are sort of patriarchal is because, of course, our society is like that, and
Yes.
people like to see the content that way. I mean, and maybe sometimes a society is like that, and even if our society might be more egalitarian than it is shown in the film, but there's a story that is believed even though it might be in real or not, and that narrative somewhere needs to theoretically also kind of go on. That's also something there. For example, say the ideal sort of a relationship that is shown in films, that kind of typical romance that is shown in films. Maybe each and everyone, most of the people have had a very different experience of relationship in their own lives, but that ideal of filmy Bollywood movies is something that people like to um, romanticize about, and there's a lot of romanticism that's actually goes on there that also kind of keeps that alive, I feel. um, and secondly, like what Kiran said, there is always a question of returns and profits, because when you put in a film, it's a humongous task. It costs a lot of money. I'm not just talking about the mainstream movies, but especially for independent filmmakers who actually and producers who actually struggle a lot to make a film and put in their hard-earned money. And when you sometimes do not get even a screen to get it released, then it could be very disheartening. And just 50 film people watching a film might not get you back the return. So sometimes there are things, and which is why we have and nowadays we live in a age of TRP, right? The more TRP a TV shows has, then only you get funders. So it's sometimes it's actually, so film is also, it's not it's also, we have also, one has to also take into account the business part of it. Otherwise, it could be very devastating for independent filmmakers and producers. I mean, after making one movie, probably, which is why many independent producers are unable to make a next one because of issues of returns, and which is why. But then again, they're really passionate people who are actually working on it and making telling stories the way they want it to be told, without caring much about profits. And this is actually progressing the film industry, Indian film industry too, I would say. I would not say that things have not changed much in the popular platform as well. Things have changed. If things had not changed, we wouldn't probably have a Nawazuddin Siddiqui as hero nowadays
Sure.
in a Salman Khan production, right? So we wouldn't have Manoj Bajpayee playing lead roles. We wouldn't even have Adil Hussain playing lead roles. These are fantastic actors, right? But if things had not changed, we wouldn't have them in mainstream films. We would only have had actors like superstars like Salman Khan or Shah Rukh Khan, or in Assam, for example, say Jotin Bora and others. When in Assamese industry, a lot of fantastic alternative independent films are being made. Um, Rima Das is one. Bulbul Can Sing, Videsh Rockstars, Amis. Now,
Amis, yeah.
by Bhaskar Hazika. Firefly Junaki Pura by Prakash Deka. Founder of Anajori, Milind Dutta is the producer of Firefly Junaki Pura, which is also the first, which actually made this film also made history because it's the first LGBTQIA film. So if things had not changed, this film would not have been made. But I would not say this is only a recent occurring. It's just that we are getting to see more of these films. But in the past also, these alternative spaces had existed. Ritik Ghosh, for example, Rituparna Ghosh, for example. Sorry, Ritik Ghosh was Ritik
Rit- Ritik Ghatak.
Ritik Ghatak, sorry, yeah, sorry, Rituparna Ghosh and Ritik Ghatak. I mean, we have had Satyajit Ray. We have had filmmakers like them in the past also. But nowadays, because the exposure is more, we get to see all these problems in, like, all these issues, or get to see all these things playing out much more widely because of internet. All of us, most of us have smartphones and we get access to, and there are lots of independent platforms also where independent films are being released. Mm. The question of returns is still there. I mean, so for example, say we are still struggling to get Janaki Porwa to a I mean, even for us, Amazon is our Netflix becomes a mainstream OTT platform because like people like independent producers like Milin, or filmmakers like Prakash Daka, Bhaskar Juga. We come absolutely from the fringes, especially for example, and more than that, regional films from the northeast have again several other barriers to cross before we actually get to Delhi or Bombay. So it's not just language; it's also political, cultural. It's also it's a lot of other things. I mean, if I can go on and on about it. So, but so it's very complex. There's not it's not an yes or no answer. But I would not say that things have not changed. Things have changed, but and popular Hindi cinemas. Otherwise, probably a Salman Khan production would not cast Nawazuddin Siddiqui as a hero. Yeah, that would not probably have been possible at all in the 90s. Now, because people's preferences are changing, that change is also coming. So it's on the filmmakers, but at the same time it's also on the audience to demand quality films and make quality films viral and popular. So it's also sort of both ways. That's there, but I would not at the same time say that this has happened only now. Alternative spaces have always existed historically. If you look back into history, I mean, we always had Rabindranath Tagore, we always had Rituparna Ghosh, we always had Ritik Ghatak, we always had Janu Borua, from Assam. I mean, we still have filmmakers like from if I talk about Assam, we still have Prakash Deka, we still have Bhaskar Hajoika, Rima Das, and Konkon Deka. So there's so many people who are actually coming up, but I would say we have a better. I mean, the future is hopeful because because once it sometimes alternative spaces take time to grow, but once they have actually found their own space, it's difficult to hold it back. So it's like a movement, like it's very at one point of time it was very difficult to talk about queer rights in India. Now the movement has found its place, and it's like blooming, and because there's so many passionate people who are actually working filmmakers, producers who are actually working to make art, even without thinking much about profit. I mean, it's not only commercial aspects that are taking into account, and the idea of low budget filming is also sort of coming, and like Kiran said, uh, not everyone is a full-time filmmaker. I mean, there's so many ways to actually experiment around it. So I would like to sort of end with a hopeful note rather than saying that nothing has changed. Things have changed, but it also had changed in the past. It's not a recent phenomenon, but it's going on for better.
Thank you, Bitopi, for such an extensive answer. So if anyone has any question, we have almost a time actually. If still anyone has any question, you can simply unmute and ask. কাৰবাৰ কিবা প্ৰশ্ন থাকিলে সুধিব পাৰে, অসমীয়াটো সুধিব পাৰে, মই ট্ৰান্সলেট কৰি দিম. So if anyone has any question. Melinda, if you have any question.
Yes, more than a question, my thoughts basically.
Sure, please go ahead.
So the one thing what's come to my mind is that I blame two people for all this toxicity in last few years. One is nobody but Donald Trump. All the how he treats women, and second is Salman Khan. This toxic masculinity, I think thanks to Salman Khan in Bombay. That's my point of view. I do not know. Somehow the whole muscle, the way, and some people, educated people, worship him. Exactly. For me, when Bitopi was talking, I was just thinking, and I was just like, Donald Trump, being the what do you call, world leader. He's one, not only he is the president of America, in a way he become the president of the world, because most powerful person. And look how he treats women. And look back last 4 years, see the number of violence happening against women. And also similarly, I look back from the movie Maine Pyar Kiya or whatever, and see the quality of Hindi movie has gone down, and the women, their clothes are becoming, vulgar. And the other thing was that whenever I see Hindi movie, when they're dancing and all that, where they wear sari and whatever their moves, and we are so used to it. Childhood we used to see Citrahar and all that, and we are used to seeing those, and we didn't feel anything much of it. But then when when I'm with my friends from abroad, and then they were passing comments like, oh, it's so vulgar, it's so, then only it just opened my mind that yes, it is actually vulgar. But we got so used to seeing that, somehow we did not, we try to, how objectifying Hindi movies, or maybe our regional movies too, how it objectifying movies, somehow we become so used to it that we didn't feel that. But when I see with the other perspective, with other people who never saw a Hindi movie, and suddenly they see those dances and their moves, quite a lot of them are very seductive and very sexualized, but we just got used to it, So again, in the movies also, when you go on showing this way of, treating women and violence and all that, there's people who see all this movie, they think that's normal, and quite often they act on it. And I think that also have affected in my transition, and me being transition from female to male, because my hero was like Tom Selleck. I thought, you have to be like Tom Selleck. I was hoping that I will have a mustache like that. But then that was what I saw, a macho man. I was disappointed that I did not go to a macho man. But, that was my, that's what I saw, look, as a child, and, toxic masculinity.
Sure.
So anyway, that's what I was just thinking about, like how it affected my mind, even when I'm transitioning, as a male body, and though I'm a feminist, though I'm still like, somehow it become okay. Somehow I, what do you call, wish to have this feminine partner, which I never got. But that's what, though I know all that, still I wanted that, and I, had argument and what do you call, with people like Bitopi and others, because my mindset was still conservative, Indian man, to be honest. Hopefully, I'm changing a little bit, but anyway, that was my thought and that I want to share, that how these movies, influence us and our thinking, stuff like that. So it was a great discussion, and I think I feel so happy to see all this kind of discussion in this platform. Making people uncomfortable, talking about subjects which are not often discussed. Thank you all.
Thank you, Milanda, for your comments. Is there any other questions? We almost, its time is almost over. So if there is no question, then maybe last comment from both the speaker, then we can end the sessions. Is there any question?
Hello.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Okay. Sir, so I have a question to Mr. Kiran. The point being that, in like a short while back, you narrated that we are not supposed to give to the audience what they want to see. We need to break up their expectations. Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
some disturbances, but you are audible, yes.
Okay. So we need to somehow break their interpretations, their expectations, and their, the way of looking at things. We don't have to cater to the audience. We don't have to please them by providing what essentially looks nicer to them, right? But how do you think, in basic, like in practical sense or in realism per se, are we going to achieve it? Because people have this sense of id about themselves. I am using the term from Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis theory. People have a certain id wherein things have to be in conformity with the things, with the way they want to see things, right? So why and how are they going to accept those media representations which are against their popular will? If my question is clear per se.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Shreya. Yeah. So I would just say that there are lots of subtle ways of doing it. It's not going to be on your face. I think sometimes people don't even realize that their expectations and conventions are actually being challenged. Right. I mean, again, I talk about how the form of the film matters as much as the content of the film. Right. Because we notice that there are lots of mainstream films that are very normative. It may not seem so. See, that's the thing. It's very subtle. It's very, you don't realize how your own expectations are being shaped by what you watch. Sometimes you end up seeing a scene in a film which seems rather innocent, not a big deal. But you need to look at the film as a whole in terms of the kind of work the camera does from the beginning to the end. What's the relationship between different shots, the different shots of a film, right? Sometimes it's not an innocent relationship. There's a lot of hidden or implicit irony. There are lots of implicit contradictions between what the film says at the level of the story and what the film is trying to say at the level of the form of the film. The kind of meta commentary that the film is trying to make, which is not obvious to the viewer's eye, right? If it's a crude movie, it's very clear. You can make out what they show is what they're trying to say, right? But sometimes films can be very pernicious. They can be harmful in ways that you don't even realize it. It seems like a very innocent scene, but you don't realize that there's actually some innocent characters being punished in a very implicit way, is killed off for being different. A character is being humiliated or punished for being a woman who has desires. But the circumstances are such that it seems like there's nothing else you could have done but to end the character's life. So one needs to try and question the kinds of assumptions that the film is making, and of course the film is part of normative society. So I think it's not, if it's a good film, if it's a layered film, if it's a subtle film, if it's nuanced, then it will find its way. There'll be a way in which you can challenge social expectations in the way the camera works, in the way the script is written, in the relationship between shots, right? Sometimes there's a very implicit connection being drawn between alternative shots, or some two very different shots. We don't even realize it. So it's about how it's about the filmmaker's sensitivity and his technical skill, which is very important, along with, of course, the script writer. And what are the things that the script is not saying? Not everything which is important is being said. The last silences are important. There's a lot of implicit things being said which are not actually being said. So you need to think about all these things. I think you have to be able to exploit the medium of the film to its maximum. Visual, the execution of space, the execution of sound. All these things are very important, right? So which is why I think that it's and which is why I said that you need to like, for example, if people like us watch Shubh Mangal Zyada Savdhan, we will have critiques of it, like what Bitopi said, right? So somebody else might say, be happy, be satisfied, at least such a movie is being made in the first place. I was like, yes, fine, good. You're talking about gay issues and all that, gay marriage, all that is okay. But of course, you still feel uncomfortable with it, right? So today you feel uncomfortable with it. Tomorrow, everyone might dismiss that film as a very silly movie. So, of course, taste is something which is being defined by what you watch and everything else that you've watched. It's not about just any one single film, but what have you been exposed to so far? How are your tastes changing is also something which depends on commercial factors as well as aesthetic factors, political factors, and so on. So everything is contingent on a particular historical moment, right? So, I mean, for example, in Shubh Mangal Savdhan, the violence that the father meets on Ayushman Khurrana is completely trivialized. It's made to seem like it's some kind of a joke, right? So just because he's a man and he's being walloped by another man, it's fine. If it had been a woman, it would not have been fine, right? So these are things that a discerning viewer can make out. And but the point is that you have to educate the viewer. You have to expose the viewer to without making it seem like some crude propaganda. But if it's a good film, you will use the form of the film to educate and inform the viewer. And you have to challenge the viewer's intelligence and not think that not assume that he or she or they are stupid. Thank you.
If I can add on to it,
Sure.
this actually, this is the experience that we have had from Firefly's Junaki Porwa. I mean, I have not been talking much about the film because that would be an entirely different discussion altogether. But I think it fits in here because I mean, after Fireflies was released, we actually started getting calls not only from the community, but also from straight people and even from my relatives whom I had not expected that they would actually connect to the film. And it was only because I think the human experience of it was sort of really highlighted. I mean, when the queer in Firefly Junaki Porwa, the character of Jahnu, it's not being queer is one part of his identity. It's not the whole of it. And and depicting it, I think presenting with the way in the filmmaker, I mean the Prakash did it, it was like he was just another human being who was like struggling to fit in for what he is. And that empathy uh, was taken well, and that empathy is something that each and every viewer probably related with. I would request you to actually watch the film if you can. And actually we have actually got videos where people have come up I mean people have actually come up videos where they have publicly apologized for being homophobic and violent to queer people in their past. So and I think that's something very powerful. And another filmmaker actually apologized for having depicted a queer character in a funny comic way in one of his creations. So, and he actually said it, okay, I never thought about it in this way. Oh, I never actually, I never thought of this issue in this way. I never really understood, queer people, because I always thought them to be different, right? But it's just that it's just another human being, and that is something I think that human experience that actually got very beautifully portrayed in the film helped connect the film with different sort of audiences. So and I think that's the power of a good movie, because uh, I mean, we have had academicians getting in touch with our scholars who want to do a PhD, include the film into the PhD. We also have very general public, I mean, lay people who have never, who have nothing to do with LGBTIQ activism or discourse. They do not even know the word queer or LGBTQIA, but they understood it. So I think, and I think that was probably the best success of the film, that it actually reached out to different strata of society, and everybody actually understood it in their own way and in the right way. I think that was humanizing it, and that is something I think guess probably a good film can do.
Thank you, Bitopi, so much for adding your viewpoint. And I guess we have come to an end for today's program. I don't see any more questions. Uh, so thank you again, Kiran and Bitopi, for quite an extensive talk and touching so many important topics and so many important references. And I guess today's discussion is quite a success. So thank you all the participants for joining this wonderful talk on gender and sexuality. And we hope all of you will join for the next talk on next Thursday. So wishing you all of you happy Durga Puja. So good night, all of you. Thank you so much. And thank you, the Anajori
Thank
team,
you.
for the technical support. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.